Hello, friends, and welcome to the new episode of I Don't Work Here Lady. Today we have 4 new stories, and I suggest that we start with the smallest story about the important thing. Ma'am, this is a factory, not a hairdresser. A few months ago, I was walking to the parking lot outside our huge manufacturing office, and an elderly lady pulled into the drive and looked very hard at the office, visibly confused. So I wandered over to help. Is this where my stylist moved to? I'm sorry, ma'am, this is Huge Company. We make our products. Oh. Well, my friend told me they moved and she thought they were over here. She was visibly confused, pulled out an old flip phone and muttered about not having any damn minutes, so I directed her to move her car off to the side and we'd work together to find her stylist with my smartphone. I wrote down directions for her and she leaves, visibly relieved, and happy to be on her way. Hey, when you're over 80 and need your hair done, it's important. And our second story. Mistaken for a hospital volunteer. I went to the hospital to get my medical records. Have to prove I was in the emergency department because I missed class. And there are volunteers that answer questions and will walk you to places when you can't find them. They're usually late teens, early 20s, and it's usually only females with a few lads here and there. So I match what the majority of them are. They wear regular clothes with red canvas long sleeves over top, all prevalent information, I swear. I went the day before and got taken to the medical records office, but it was closed, so when I came yesterday I knew where it was, so I was going to just walk there myself. I was wearing a red windbreaker / raincoat that exactly matches the volunteer's long sleeve color. A woman stopped me and asked me where a ward was, I think maternity? And I informed her politely that I wasn't a volunteer and pointed her in the direction of the desk. She was really polite and said thank you. I took my jacket off so I wouldn't be asked again, realizing I could be mistaken for a volunteer. So I'm walking along and I hear a woman say, "Hey, where's room whatever?" I keep walking because I think she's talking to someone else. She then grabs my arm and yells, "Excuse me, where is room whatever?" I stood there kind of shocked because this woman in her maybe 40s, would not let go of my arm. She continued, "Just because you take your uniform off doesn't mean you ignore me. Do your job. Take me to my daughter's room." She tried to shove her bags into my hands too, which I promptly gave right back. I told her I didn't work or volunteer here and that the desk with the volunteers was just around the corner. I finally shook her hand off of me. Did that stop her? Nope. I said, "Take me to her room. I didn't think they hired effing idiots." I said I don't work here. Please leave me alone. I turned around and started walking towards medical records again. She grabbed me again, and we had basically the same exchange over and over until finally an orderly asked what was going on. "This effing idiot won't help me get to my daughter. Who does the hiring here? Oh, they must know she's mental." Orderly: "It doesn't look like she has an ID badge anywhere, and she doesn't have a uniform on, which makes me think she probably doesn't work here. I can show you the way, but if you won't quiet down, I'll have to call security to escort you out." Yes, she does, and she's going to do it. She started trying to drag me up the hallway while she was still screeching that I must do my job. I slipped because I was just in the hospital myself and got tired. She then tried to drag me, just screaming, "Get up!" She ended up dragging me about 8 to 10 meters before a security guard came running over. She was, I presume, escorted out of the hospital because that's the direction she was taken. I then walked to medical records and they're not even open. I waited to get walked to my car because the security guard wanted to make sure she didn't somehow find me in the parkade. I feel bad because her daughter might have been really ill. That can be awful and stressful, but that doesn't mean you get to treat people like that. Shout out to anyone that works in healthcare. You guys are superheroes. Definitely not wearing red today when I go back. I'm not in your army. Back in 2002, I was doing contractor security in Kuwait. No soldier was allowed off base alone. Being someone who does security for the military, they expect you to conform to the same grooming standards, haircut, clean shave, etc., and I was still very young, 23. One evening, I went out to dinner with my girlfriend at a local Chili's, and I was enjoying myself. There was a table with some noticeable Americans, and they were definitely service members. I really didn't care anything about them. Apparently, one of them was keeping an eye on me, so eventually my girlfriend went to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there alone, and all of a sudden someone starts speaking to me, and they're right behind me. He's older, maybe mid-30s. "What's your name, son?" I turned to him, a bit rattled by someone approaching me. "Why do you ask?" "You seem nervous for me just asking your name." Sorry, it's..." And I told him my name. "What unit are you with?" I was a little confused by the question, but I answered anyway. "CSA." "Not familiar with that military unit. You know you're not allowed off base alone, and judging by your age, you're not supposed to be off base at all." Now, I look young. At 23, I look barely 18, and with a high and tight, I look like I'm just out of basic training. "I'm a contractor." "I've worked with a lot of contractors here, and none are your age. Sorry, you're going to have to come up with a better excuse." I started getting defensive. "Why are you off base? Why don't you worry about yourself than others?" "You know who I am? I'm," name and rank I can't remember, but an officer. "I work directly with the installation commander." "Whatever. Leave me alone. I'm not in your military." "What did you just say?" At this point, he puts his hand on my shoulder and leans over, about to speak more. "Give me your ID." "Get your effing hand off me. That's assault." Then another man approached. "What's the problem?" "Young service member off base without permission." I stand up, push his arm off my shoulder. "Keep your effing hand off me, like I said." "Look, you're going to need to take your conversation outside. You're disrupting others." My date then returned. "What's going on?" Me to the manager. "Call the police. These people are bothering me and putting their hands on me. Can you take this outside?" "Give me your ID now." I pull out my wallet and my Kuwait civil ID. Every resident like myself has one. U.S. military does not. This is my ID. I'm a resident of Kuwait. I work here. I live here. I'm not in your effing military. Manager, I have to ask you all to leave now. So I grab my date, throw about 20 KD for the bill on the table, and make a dart for the door. My date at this point is nervous, thinking something's going to happen where the police will be called. Dating in Kuwait is not really legal. Single men and women can be suggested as having a relationship outside of marriage. I told her what was happening, that the three men came outside after being kicked out by the manager. "I'm not done with you." I start to walk away with my date. He and one other man follow me. They're too smart not to make a huge scene. They wrote my license plate down, and I flipped them off as I drove away. 2 days later, I get a call from my lieutenant telling me to see the security manager, who's wanting me to come to the office to speak with me about what happened. Come to find out, the person at the restaurant put up bolo out for me, my description, and my vehicle. Told the security manager what happened. He told me that I could have handled it better, and then told me to go to the lobby and wait. I'm in my uniform, looks just like them, however, they are tan where they're in desert uniform. My name tape says Security Forces, not U.S. Army, and last, my company patch is on my shoulder. The person who confronted you's coming to see me now, and the PMO will be here. So I did. I waited in the lobby, and he did show up in uniform, and one of the other man said something priceless. "Is that the soldier you were talking to at Chili's?" while pointing at me. The man just looked at me like he'd made a horrible mistake. Never saw him again. I was asked if I wanted to press charges. Declined. Told them the punishment that the military, if they do get punished, is fine with me. Can confirm some officers love throwing that tiny bit of power around, whether they're right or wrong. And our next story. I almost went to customer service and asked where I should send an invoice for my labor. Last week, I was working on my kitchen. Long story short, this was a 4th out of 6 trips I'd be making trying to find plumbing fittings that worked with my house. I was wearing old jeans and an old Oscar the Grouch shirt. They both have paint and whatever else collects on sacrificial work clothes. It was 8:30 p.m. and I was in the plumbing section of a large hardware store. The blue one, not the orange one, looking at fittings when an older couple with a small section of hose walk up and start looking at the wall of fittings. They look for a few minutes, and eventually the guy looks at me and says, "So I'm trying to... what do you recommend?" I looked up like Jim from The Office, thinking to myself, "What? Me? Dude, I'm trying to figure this stuff out too." By sheer happenstance, I had done what he was trying to do and said he needed to go to lawn and garden on the other side of the building and they sell hose repair / extension kits, and it's super easy. I explained the process, and he left the aisle. I turned to leave when another guy, hearing our conversation, had a plumbing fitting in his hand and started right in with his issue. He explained what he was doing, and sure enough, it was going to take 2 parts, but I pointed them out and showed him the stuff. He said thanks, and I started back down the aisle. Then a third person shouted out, "Hey, I have a question too." All I could think is, where are all the employees? I came back and I said, "I don't work here," to the lady, and she said, "Oh, but you're answering questions." I let her know I was just trying to be helpful. Not even kidding, she just asks away. Funny thing is, she was looking for a new refrigerator water line. She was standing next to them, and they were labeled Ice Maker Water Line. I said, "Those?" and pointed. After a few embarrassed thank yous, I left. I helped 3 customers at a store I don't work at. I was really close to asking a manager, "What would you say you do here?" It's frustrating that these stores staff so far down that customers get desperate enough to ask complete strangers. I kind of like asking strangers for help. I think strangers need to talk more often. Maybe I'm too old-fashioned. Well, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.